It's a beautiful Wednesday morning here in Lagos. Good morning. This morning, I am Nifemi Oguntoye, standing in for Yomi Folari, your regular host on this show. Uncle Yuri is on vacation and he will be with you shortly. All right, let's begin by extending our condolence to the family of the late Air Chief Marshal Alex Sabundu Bade. He's, of course, a retired four-star flag officer of the Nigerian Air Force who served as the 18th Chief of Air Staff, as well as the 15th Chief of Defense Staff of the Armed Forces of Nigeria. Unfortunately, he was gruesomely murdered yesterday by unknown gunmen on Abuja Road. It's a very sad development for our nation, especially at such a time like this, a UTAD, and of course, as we count down to a general election, the issues of security in the nation is now top-notch for many people who are indeed concerned. Now, we'll begin the show this morning from Owerri, the Imo State capital, where we have the Imo State Governor, Rochas Okorocha, standing by. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Terrific. Glad to have you around. Let's begin with the fallout of the APC primaries. You, indeed, and the Ogun State governor were not quite pleased about how things turn out. What exactly is your position now, especially now that your preferred candidate, Uche Nwosu, is now a flag bearer of the AA? Is that not a conflict of interest since you are still with the APC?
Well, thank you very much. There's really no conflict of interest per se. What we're trying to do is correct the mess which was made or created by the national chairman of the party in trying to do what is not right. Our primary concern now is to ensure that President Muhammad Buhari wins his re-election in Imo State. And that brings us to an arrangement of an alliance between APC and Action Alliance. Both parties have agreed that President Muhammad Buhari should be our candidate and will all support him, in line with other parties in Imo State that have come into the same alliance. This is just to manage the ugly situation which was created by the national chairman in trying to do what is not right. I want to make sure that it does not affect our local elections. In the first instance, the so-called candidate of APC that was forced on the people illegally, and the candidate that was literally forced on the people is not even a member of APC. He doesn't have any registration in his ward or local government or both. But to cope with the ugly situation, we try to make amends to make sure that President Muhammad Buhari, who is the our primary concern, does not lose election in Imo State. As it stands now, Uche Nwosu is running for governor in AA, and I'm running for senator in APC. I'm still a full-fledged APC member, and the preferred choice of the people, who is Uche Nwosu, was denied his ticket even when he won the election severally. He has no other choice but to go to a different party, but with his sympathy still with APC, as that affects President Muhammad Buhari's re-election. So the situation is okay. At the end of it all, we shall know who the people actually want in the states. And again, I'd like to say that I heard yesterday that the same Oshi Moole has also suspended the state ESCO or the state party structure. I think his plane is on a mission that he will never succeed.
Let me just ask you this
because
very quickly, Governor Okorocha. A couple of weeks ago, the National Working Committee of your party sent a delegation to appeal with you as regards development in Imo State. You mentioned earlier you're running for Senate on the platform of the APC. Your candidate or choice candidate is going to be with the Action Alliance, and also you're supporting the re-election of Mr. President. Isn't that complicating in and of itself for the average electorate in Imo? And there are many people asking the question, why didn't you prevail on your son-in-law to work with your party at this time?
You know, let me correct this impression to start with. Whenever people are trying to create a sentiment that is outside the main issue, they try to address the young man as my son-in-law, as if though there's a constitutional provision in Nigeria where son-in-laws cannot contest election. Let me tell you, there's no contestant today for election that is not somebody's son-in-law. Everybody running for election is somebody's son-in-law. I don't know why this young man does no longer have an identity of himself, a full-fledged man, well-educated, with such a track record, impeccable track record, can no longer answer his father's name. The only name he answers now is son-in-law. So I want you to address Uche Nwosu as a man. Nature brought it that he had to marry my daughter. That does not make him a nobody. He has his history, he has his personality. So whenever you're asking questions, address him as Uche Nwosu, who is a man brought by the people to contest for election. And if you do that, that will be fine. And talking about the team that came, when they came, they saw things for themselves. And they were full of regrets, of what they consider the greatest height of injustice, method on a state that is APC, and the only state in the southeast that became APC, the only hope of APC in the southeast, were being truncated by a decision that is not worth it in the first place. So they are coming here, they saw for themselves, and they saw the feelings of the people. But one thing you must do, that you must commend me for the wisdom which I've applied in making sure that we do not lose both ways. Listen to me, if you remove Uche Nwosu from the ticket of election, APC will lose election. President Muhammad Buhari will lose election here.
Governor Okorocha, let me just ask you one final question because of our time here. There are many who have considered this decision of yours as an anti-party decision, as it were. But then, what future really lies for the APC in Imo State? There are some who are concerned about even the possibility of the APC winning election, given this huge division along power parties in your own political party.
Well, let me inform you that alliance of parties is allowed. And as it stands now, other parties might come into alliance with APC for presidential election or for governorship election. It is allowed. It is allowed, and it's proper. There's nothing absolutely wrong with it. Unless you are saying that other people from other parties cannot vote President Muhammad Buhari or vote a governor of their choice. So there's nothing wrong about it. And let me tell you how bad the situation is. Only yesterday, we were informed that our governorship candidate of APC is now banned from moving anywhere outside Nigeria because of charges of fraudulent activities. Now, are you doing us a favor by exposing our APC candidate, making him look like a fraudster by banning him with other senators from traveling abroad, and you want us to win elections? So they're complicating the matter before us.
Governor, this indeed are not...
Secondly, let me say to you, let me correct one thing and to inform all those listeners there that if it is true that the National Working Committee have suspended the state ESCO of the party, I will advise them to resign from that decision because there's a proper court judgment instructing them never to interfere, National Working Committee, with the structure of APC in Imo State. and they shouldn't go contrary to the judgment of courts, because that will not represent our party very well.
I believe you
so
made
as
your
it stand,
point.
my friend, let me just tell you,
Okay.
I want to say to you that we are winning election. APC will win when it comes to Mr. President Mohamed Buhari, as the Senate, some few senators and federal house, they win. But I can't guarantee APC winning for governorship election in Imo State because of the situation.
I think you made your point quite clear. We'll really love to have more time with you to discuss developing the issues in your state ahead of the general election. If you will give your word to this morning that you'll be back, then of course we'll make that happen. Governor Okorocha.
Please, I give you my word, and please give me 1 hour to explain to you what is happening, because it seems most people are getting things wrong out there. There's miscommunication, misinformation, and misunderstanding of matters.
It's all right.
So it will be my pleasure to really address you.
Thank you very much for joining us, Mr.
God bless you. God bless you.
Imo State Governor. Now our attention is drawn to the Nigerian Army's threat to shut down, of course, the Amnesty International offices in the country, alleging that there is credible evidence the organization is working hard to destabilize Nigeria. Now, note that this is coming few days after the army accused UNICEF of aiding terrorism in the northeastern part of the country. According to the army spokesman, Sonny Usman, Amnesty International's alleged attempt to destabilize the nation was noted through the fabrication of, quote, fictitious allegations of human rights abuses against the Nigerian security forces, end quote. Of course, reacting to this development, Amnesty International chairman in Nigeria, Awal Rafsanjani, says shutting down the offices is not the solution to the negligence or the failure of the untimely response to the issue of human rights, as well as providing security for Nigeria. Recall that Amnesty International had recently accused the federal government of failing in its obligation to exercise due diligence, both in addressing the underlying causes of the violence between herders and villagers, as well as stopping the violence when it did occur, resulting in the death of not less than 3,641 people in the past 3 years, and of course the displacement of thousands more. The very graphic details are captured in a report titled Harvest of Deaths, 3 years of bloody clashes between farmers and herders. I'm joined this morning by a security consultant, Major Debo Basharin, retired, to discuss the Amnesty report and the dust it's raising. Good morning, Major. Thank you for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure having me.
Let's begin with the credibility of Amnesty International as a human rights-based organization, a London-based non-governmental organization focusing on human rights. It claims to have 7 million staffers in over 124 countries of the world, founded 57 years ago in July 1961, and its mission is to campaign for a world in which every person enjoys human rights as enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other international human rights instruments. Now, it's also important to note here that in the field of international human rights organization, Amnesty has the third longest history after the International Federation for Human Rights and broadest name recognition. Now, it's believed by many to set standards for the movement. In your opinion, as a military officer, what really would you say the credibility of this organization is over the years?
Well, thanks for the question. In as much as I would not want to demonize Amnesty International, I want your audience to take into cognizance the fact that not all things that emanate from the West, whether they're media, the Human Rights Council or whatever, is sacrosanct. It's not everything that they push out. That's right. The truth, because they have their own interests too. In as much as I want to agree with them that there's much work to do on the part of the Nigerian forces vis-a-vis the human rights issue, one should be very circumspect about these repeated reports about the military misbehaving, all the time. You don't get such reports from other countries. A good example is what is happening in the International Criminal Court. Are you telling me white presidents and white governors are not
as corrupt
as African governors and leaders? And you can see from the inception of that court, it's only African leaders that they'll be pushing So every country, and this is one thing that we should learn from this. You see, once there's a good government in town, there will be less pressure from the West that if you don't do this, we do that to you. And this, I said this might be what is happening. Nobody, I can say this for a fact, and I know you know too well, that nobody can push Mugabe, what do you call this man, Kagame, of, what do you call that country?
What's it called now?
Rwanda.
Yeah, Rwanda.
Nobody can push him around. Even the respect he gathers from the West is astonishing.
Indeed, the criticisms of Amnesty and its policies is not limited to the number of protests we've seen on the streets of Abuja. Countries like Australia, Czech Republic, Russia, and even the United States have raised their voices in criticizing their oppression over the years. But Amnesty is saying that this action, the action of these governments, are simply a reaction to their own observation of human rights abuses in those areas.
It wouldn't have bothered me if their observations are sincere. They've got motives too. That's what I'm trying to stress here. They've got motives. Not all what they churn out from their media office is the correct situation.
What would be the intent of this motive that
well, about? I wouldn't know. I mean, it could be very large, it could be very small, but it depends on their interest. I mean, anything West, they serve their own personal interest first. You can remember that some other countries might have gone through this. Remember the history of the war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. When you do put a searchlight, you know it's the West behind it. If you don't do their bidding, they have a way of dealing with us. And that is why we are advocating for a very sound government. Good governance is the solution to all this. Once they know that you have those skeletons in your cupboard, they'll be very careful in addressing this type of issues. You know, I mentioned the ICC earlier on, and this is what we continue once we have this government that doesn't stand well with the people. It doesn't take the people to convince us.
Let's take a look very quickly at the report itself, the Amnesty report of 2018, titled Harvest of Death, 3 Years of Bloody Clashes Between Farmers and Herders. The title itself is a bit scary, but it's not as scary as the content. Now, it largely suggests that the Nigerian authorities' failure to properly investigate communal clashes and bring perpetrators to justice has fueled the bloody clash in the northern part of the country. The conflict, according to Amnesty, has resulted to the death of not less than 3,641 people in the past 3 years, with thousands more displaced. How troubling are these figures?
Well, the figures are troubling, but have they established the fact that 30,000 something people have actually died?
Well,
where did they collect the information from?
According to them.
According to them, it's from sources.
That's right.
You know, sources may not be credible. Sources may be credible. So it's not, you can't take that to the bank now because they've mentioned a particular figure. That's the number of people that have died. I'm not in any way advocating or supporting or being the mouthpiece of the military this time around. There's a lot of work to be done. The hierarchy of the military ought to have been changed by now. Because so many of these reverses that we're suffering here and there, less credence to what Amnesty International, I mean, people who are disgruntled in the service, we can churn out any information, false information to these people, and they'll take it to the bank. Another thing is the military that have been in existence for quite some time now. There is a lot of reorganization that should be going on by now, or must have been completed. But still, you know, when you allow these people to sit down there forever, this is the type of thing you expect.
Why do you think the president isn't budging as regards the clarion call, which you just made, to change, you know, service chiefs at this time?
He knows why. He's the president and commander-in-chief. I'm not supporting that.
You think it's an informed decision? Oh,
well, I wouldn't say it's informed, because he has lieutenants around him who advise him. It depends on who you believe, you know.
Okay, so according to Amnesty International, it visited 56 communities in Adamawa, Benue, Kaduna, Taraba, and Zamfara State affected by the clashes and conducted 262 interviews. Now, the document itself, about 69 pages, had, you know, some pictures. It claims to have some audiovisual evidences. One of the claims is that security forces were often positioned close to the attacks, which lasted hours and sometimes days, but they are slow to act.
Are you talking in terms of the herdsmen
Exactly.
attack and so on and so forth? Well, that's an unfortunate incident. It's another area that I tend to disagree with the president because he was too slow in reacting to the situation. This situation should have been nipped in the bud in the first place. This type of thing shouldn't have been allowed to happen at all. If you want to call this country our own, it doesn't belong to a particular set of people, a particular group. It belongs to everybody. So I will expect that the president of Nigeria will not condone that type of thing.
So no. Amnesty says also that security forces claimed, rather, that security forces received information about impending attacks and in some cases came in contact with attackers, but did nothing to stop or prevent the attacks. It documented at least 7 cases where security forces were aware of attack, but did nothing. Wasn't this what the former Minister of Defense, General Theophilus Danjuma, insinuated earlier this year in March, when he alleged that the army was colluding with the herdsmen? He even raised alarm that there was an attempt at ethnic cleansing.
Well, I wouldn't dispute his assessment of the situation. First of all, it's people who are affected. People from that region, he comes from that region, so there might be some sentiments to it, but on the larger picture is that the president failed to act on time. He should have nipped this thing in the bud. General Danjuma is a very well-respected general that we ever had. His tenure as the chief of army staff was not one of that of sterling performance. So when he says something, he says it, there is credible something, whatever he says. So even those of us who are retired still respect him for him to have voiced that opinion, because I will concede to him that he knows better than I do in those areas. He should be, it should be very closer to better information than I do. I concede to that. But the fact remains that the president didn't act on time. He should have stopped this. So it's left for him to clear the air about this allegation that is because of ethnicity and that kind of thing. All these allegations flying in the air.
I get it precisely. A viewer is calling in now. Yakub is calling in from Dokpemon. Good morning, Yakub. Yakub, are you there?
Hello, Mr.
Good morning. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Good morning, sir, and then good morning to the general.
I'm not a general. I'm a retired major.
Sorry, Good morning, Baba. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, yes, Amnesty International, they're always giving Nigerian and other country reports like this. But one thing is not clear to me as a layman on the street. The old man in the studio has already said it earlier. How are they collating their figures? It was not known to anybody. That's number one. They may give complete figures. There's no doubt about it. Because if you can tell us that a lot of people like this die in Nigeria, yes, we know that people have been got killed. But in their report, I may be wrong, I may be right. I learned that the insurgency used anti-aircraft against our military, and then which is prohibited by law in any way that you cannot use anti-aircraft on human beings. I didn't see our military at the workforce using the same weapon against insurgency. I can tell you, Amnesty International will come out today and telling Nigeria and the whole world that the Nigerian military are using anti-aircraft against the insurgency. They will never mention that in their report. One thing I want the rest of the hierarchy in this country to do is so simple. What they need to do now is that they should come out and give it to Nigeria the right information for debunk all this information that Amnesty International gives to us, so that we will know the true story of the issue. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much for your contribution this morning. Well, are you comfortable with the position of the presidency? Because we have a statement from Mr. President, and I'm quoting it now. While President Buhari cherishes, of course, this is from his Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Gabriel Shehu. While President Buhari cherishes and encourages the noble ideas on which institutions like Amnesty are founded, The organization's operations in Nigeria seem geared towards damaging the morale of the Nigerian military. It often appears as if the Nigerian government is fighting two wars on terror, against Boko Haram and against Amnesty International. The obvious bias and inaccuracies in Amnesty International's recent country reports on Nigeria's risk Amnesty's reputation as an impartial international organization. Would this be throwing the baby away with the water, the bathwater?
Not quite. Unless until we as a nation can decide what we really want. This type of thing will not stop coming. All these ballistic missiles they are throwing at the government. Remember that we went to the West, this present government tried to acquire some military equipment. We've paid, we've done everything. But at the last minute, they stopped it on this same allegation of human rights abuses. There's something that in warfare, they call it fog of war. When you are under intensity, there is a possibility you can misbehave. I'm not saying that is condoned. The Geneva Convention is there to handle such cases. But they are occasional, what you call collateral damage. It could happen, but how are they so precise? And you can see the whole thing looks like, I tend to align with the government this time around, that it may miss it may not be what we seem it is.
That's right.
That they're churning out to people.
Let's take this call from the United Kingdom. Good morning, Sam. Hello, Sam, are you there?
Hello, sir.
Please go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I think, I'm very sorry to say this, like the gentleman in your studio was saying. I think the Amnesty International, they are not really I'm very sorry to say this, they are not really interested in peace in Nigeria. Because if they are interested in Nigerian peace, if not, they just want to keep on portray themselves as, sorry, I'm overhearing myself. So if they are not really looking at their own interests alone, without the interests of Nigerian as a general, this morning when I was listening to TVC News, maybe one of their lawyers or a spokesman was saying that military should come with the evidence, or if truly they found an evidence against Amnesty International. But the issue here is that we're talking about the security. You can't expect the military to come out with all their intelligence findings. And then the Amnesty International at any time sit down with the government and suggest a solution to the problem the military are facing. I think they need to, if they really mean good for Nigeria, not to keep the interests of their business.
I think you made your point very clear, Sam. Thank you very much for your contribution. Just in a few seconds, this development is coming a few days after the army had accused UNICEF of spying for Boko Haram. In all of your experiences as a major, did you witness any, of such culpability on the part of international aid agencies?
Not personally, because during the Civil War in which I participated, there wasn't anything, I would say there wasn't anything like that, but history has shown us that things of that nature do happen during wars. You get some of these people sneaking under the cover of being working under one of these aid agencies and doing what is antithetical to what the country stands for. You know what I'm trying to say. And it happens all over the place. Amnesty International should report on what is going on in Far East. There are so many countries there that are boiling now with this type of trouble all over the place. And you won't see a report on that. But always Africa, Africa, Africa. We should learn how to stand up and defend ourselves from them.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. Security consultant Major Debo Basharun retired. Glad to have your thoughts on this development.
Thank you very much for having me.
We'll take a break now. When we return, we're turning our attention to the forthcoming governorship election in Lagos State. And I'll be joined with one of the main contenders. Stay with us. Welcome back. So Lagos, this is the big deal. Commercial hub of the nation has over 6 million registered voters, if not the highest of registered voters ahead of the 2019 general election. I'm joined now by the People's Democratic Party gubernatorial candidate, Mr. Jimmy Agbaje. Good morning and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
I'm glad that you made it. And now that you're here, let's fact check some of the things we've heard. So I've heard that when you lost the election in 2015, that you claimed or you said that you were not going to contest again. How true is that?
Well, in the first place, things have to be put in proper perspective. Whatever statement was accredited to me was not done after the results of the elections.
Oh.
What you had was that immediately I finished voting on election day, the journalists escorted me home and did an interview and asked me, if you don't make it this time, are you going to run again? So it had nothing to do with the results of the elections.
I see.
And I said, well, having gone this far, yeah, I don't think so. But it was not tied to the results of the elections. It was a statement that was made ever before. It's just that the interview was aired after the results were announced.
Oh, so the interview took place before
It was
that
immediately
particular
after voting. They hadn't even started counting, people were still voting. It was an interview that was conducted immediately I left the polling unit.
Did you feel exhausted at that time? Perhaps that, this is the second time I'm running, I've spent a lot of money,
Well,
I'm not going to try again.
Well, when you say exhaustion, I mean, running an election is quite, takes quite a lot from you. So to that extent, yes. It takes a lot of you in terms of energy, in terms of opportunity cost of so many things, money, resources, family. So yes, it's a lot of work that goes into it, especially when you're running a campaign that you're taking a lot of the load, you're carrying a lot of the load. If I had the backing of a state government, then a lot of things would be done for me.
You carried a lot of the load in 2015.
Yes.
You contested under the platform of the People's Democratic Party.
Correct.
Your party was the incumbent government. As of today, they are still being probed for how much they spent for that election.
Well, I think that I have not been probed is in itself an indication that there was nothing from me. We ran on our own steam, we ran on our own blood, on our own sweat. In 2015.
At what point did you change your mind to run again?
Let me put it like this. Like I said, that statement had nothing to do with the results of the elections. But I'll confess that after the elections, I did say that I was never going to leave politics, and I've always said so, that I will remain in politics. And for me, my goal was to look for some younger person or persons who would run for governor of Lagos with the right ideas, with the right values, that I believe we needed for Lagos. I spent like 2 years trying to identify, so to say, an indigenous Lagosian that would fit the bill.
You didn't find?
Well, I didn't find. I'm not saying they're not out there, but let me say I didn't find. A lot of the younger ones who are running today for president, you'll find that there's no indigenous Lagosian there. Because then maybe if I'd seen one of them, I would have said, look, why not come around for governor?
You're saying that in the whole of your party, the PDP in Lagos, there's no younger person who had bright ideas.
It's not even about political party.
Oh,
when you're talking about governorship of Lagos, it's not about a party. It's about who do you think can do this job. And basically that was what it was about.
So the 2015 election you contested in was a very peculiar one. It was the first time the incumbent governor, government APC, would win with the lowest margin since 1999. As a matter of fact, they won with only 152,206. And prior to that election, they had won with over 1 million. How did you feel?
Well, I like to say...
Did you feel like, I almost won?
No. I tell everybody, I was not declared winner. Let's put it like that. I'm a sportsman, and therefore, I have to accept the...
But you didn't dispute that result,
oh, we did.
Did you?
We did.
Okay.
We went to the tribunal, went to the appeal court, went right up to the Supreme Court.
I see.
So we did dispute, but I wasn't declared winner. Having said that, people must also appreciate that the results that were declared against the backdrop of the fact that we had lost at the center 2 weeks before. And so we were really swimming against the tide. So for us to get those kind of results speaks volumes, that even having lost at the center, we had lost any backing we could have received, There was the effect of a bandwagon, there was the bandwagon effect, there was the ripple effect. But even with that, we came up with those declared results.
All right, so let's come to 2018. And
2019.
I mean, of course, we're still in 2018.
Well, we're in 2018,
pre-election.
2019 elections.
2019 is the big deal.
Yes.
No doubt about it. Now, you've been campaigning with the hashtag Set Lagos Free. There are some who consider that to be insulting, that we are not in bondage here in Lagos. Why would you want to free us? What really is the mindset behind that?
Well, let me put it like this. For those who would like to do some work, I'll give them the word oligarchy.
Okay.
And basically, we're talking about freedom from an oligarchy. Oligarchy basically is saying that you have a few people, vested interests, that control Lagos, that hold Lagos, that determine in what direction the economy goes, in what direction the politics is played. And so when you're talking about freedom, we're talking about freedom from an oligarchy, a government of oligarchy, period. Let
me do one more fact check. It was also in the news that you were quoted to have said that if the incumbent governor was running for a second term, that you wouldn't have contested. How true is that?
No.
You never
I never said
that.
anything like that.
All right, so issue-based campaign has really been canvassed for these elections, and it's good to see that to an extent you guys are doing it. In your opinion, what are the main issues, that would matter to Lagosians, in this election?
I think Lagosians presently feel generally in a very difficult position. And again, it's a very fine opportunity to I say my thoughts and prayers are with the Abule Egba victims.
That's right.
They've lost
of the explosion.
They've lost lives. We don't know how many yet. They've lost property. They've lost a future. Now, maybe that's the point to start with. Don't forget that these pipelines, we've always had them. But in recent times, we've had this vandalization of pipelines. It's poverty, and I think that's the way to, maybe the way I'd like to introduce it today. There's so much poverty, and that's what the problem of Lagos is. Now, if you have a situation where you need money to send your child to get good education, again, our education in Lagos in the last 20 years, the average those who have passed with 5 credits English, is 20% in the last 20 years. Only 20% of our children have passed WAEC, But so if you have a situation where my child will go to good public school, then I don't need to look for money to send that child to school. If I know that if my family is ill, I don't have to look for money. Then it means that health is taken care of. Now, if I want to do business, I want to be able to survive. I want to know that there's an enabling environment.
That's right.
And so that goes to ease of doing business. If I want to open a shop, if I want to open anything, what do I have to pay? Do I look at government as my partner, or do I look at government as my bully? These are the basic things that people want. People coming to Lagos, by the records, 1 million people coming to Lagos every year. And what that means is that they're looking for Lagos that is paved with gold. Now, but they're hardworking. They're ready to work. But what they need is that enabling environment.
So some would say that the same reason why millions of people troop in year in, year out is the fact that Lagos is a leading example in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And it's no doubt a fallout of what
well,
you
let me
called
explain. Is that it is better than many other states that live on federal allocation. But the truth is that Lagos, at the rate it's going, will collapse.
Wouldn't you say that the huge internally generated revenue is a fallout of ingenuity in the part of leadership?
Yeah, but to what purpose is it used for? That's why I said it's an oligarchy. If it's used for a few people, then Lagos is not enjoying it. There was a time that Ibadan was the commercial center, was the political center, was the education center, not just in the Southwest, but in Nigeria. It is no longer so. So we shouldn't have this comfort zone mentality that all is well. Because the same way Ibadan was great is the same way that Lagos can lose it if it doesn't get it right. If 1 million people are coming in every year and you don't have anything to cope with it, then Lagos is going to collapse. So it means that if you don't get your transportation right, and we're beginning to see it traffic-wise, if you can't move the roads, then people are going to carry their businesses away from Lagos. People are going to carry their businesses away from Nigeria. Lagos is losing business, is losing people to neighboring states, to neighboring countries. There was a time Lagos was the industrial capital. It's no longer that. That we've lost. So very soon you just find that people are going. So what we're saying is that for Lagos, in 20 years, we've had what we call these incremental steps. It's not coping with the realities of what we are faced with. And we had a governor, we've had governments in Lagos. You had a Jakonde government, for example, that you could say had those gigantic steps. At that time, was able to, in 4 years, was able to give us water. We had water everywhere, was able to collapse the education system from 3 to 1, was able to do housing. The Badagry end was open because he did that, and I can go on and on. That was a government of 4 years. Now, that took care of a lot of things for the future. And what we're saying today is that we can't boast of education, we can't boast of health. If you look at health, for example, in Lagos in terms of our life expectancy in Lagos is 49 years. That's even below the national average. So we're in the bottom half of the 36 states and Abuja as far as life expectancy is concerned. So we're saying, what are we then saying we're doing with all that IGR that you're talking about? Who is benefiting from this IGR?
One of the things I've read about you is the fact that you contest and then you withdraw, that you have not been consistently engaging with the public, that you're that kind of politician who came in 2007, right?
Yeah.
And then they didn't hear anything from you until when you were running in 2014. Would you say that,
No, that's not correct. I think
fair?
we've got to understand and put things in proper perspective. I am a very, very active politician. I ran in 2015. After 2015, don't forget, between 2015 and 2018, I ran for the national chairman of my party in 2016. I ran again in 2017. But more importantly is that, like I said, I've been very concerned about the future, about the younger generation. And I do a lot of those motivational talks. I attend all those programs. Maybe one or two people, some things happened, and I'll give a good example. People felt, for example, at the time of the toll gate, they wanted to hear my voice. And my position was, in 2015, my campaign was very clear that Lekki toll gate would be scrapped. Now, so immediately after the election, government increased the tariff. Now, having increased the tariff, people expected me to come out and join the protest. I said, why do you want me to join the protest? My position is very clear. I don't even believe in this toll gate. So it's not about an increase because you're fighting a symptom. But it's allowed for you to do it. But I don't need to be there. That's one. Secondly, if I'm there, the government will use the campaign in a way to say that, oh, it's PDP that is organizing it. You see, in a presidential system, the way it works is that you run your campaign. The people must be part of the process of what they want. You don't expect one person to be in the forefront. So for me, in the toll gate issue, it was like you have a disease. The disease was that toll gate shouldn't be there. The disease was that you have people in government who are arrogant, who do not feel that they owe anybody any explanation. It's a government of oligarchs. And so the issue of a toll gate was just a symptom of a disease.
Let me hold you very briefly to take this call from London. Good morning, Olaliko.
Hello?
I can hear you. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Oh, yeah, my contribution is very simple. Nobody holds Lagos bondage like what Jimabaje claimed. The Lagos is working. The PDP that caused the problem to Nigeria when they took over in 1999 was starting to cause a problem to Nigeria because they have a chance to change military constitution. They failed to change it. And you're talking about toll gate. In where I live here in the UK, double crossing, they take toll gate. They take money. When you pass through double crossing, they will charge you £2.50. So it's happened everywhere in the world. So people cannot just come because they want to gain a political gain and say someone take Lagos bondage. Nobody take Lagos bondage. Lagos is working. That's why people come into Lagos.
I believe you made your point very clearly, Olaliko. Thank you very much for calling in. Another issue that is relevant.
Can I address this? Well, I mean, I have a right of reply.
Sure you do.
Now, I want to make it very clear. when I talk about the toll gate, for example, I'm talking about the Lekki one, and I'll make it very, very brief. That Lekki toll gate was concessioned. That particular toll gate was concessioned to a private company. Government, at a point in time, bought back that concession for some 30 billion. In other words, said, look, don't worry, you don't need to collect tolls again. We're taking it back from you. That money was paid by taxpayers. Now, the same taxpayers, after that has gone, you now say you're going to still pay toll on it. Now, this time to a private company owned by the oligarchs. And I'm saying you buy your house back and then you start to pay rent for it. That's one. Number two, toll gates. I don't have anything against toll gates. So, and I'm very particular about the toll gates.
If you become governor, for instance, what do you intend to do with the
That Lekki one will be scrapped.
All right, let's move on very quickly. I have quite a number of questions to ask you here. The issue of traffic congestion has become a menace in Lagos. Many productive hours lost to traffic. Of course, billions of naira lost in the economy and all of that. Do you have a magic wand?
It's not about the magic wand.
Traffic gridlock.
It's not about the magic wand, and that's why I said I used Jakonde, for example, when he opened up the Badagry end. It's about preparing for the future. We have not, in the last 20 years, prepared for a growing Lagos, for a mega city. Lagos is a mega city, and don't forget that the definition of mega city is when you're above 10 million, where, at least by the records, over 20 million, and growing by the day. You've got to prepare for it. Now, let's just take an example of what people will be familiar with. Let's take our Lagos Island. Now, you have the corporate headquarters of most companies today on Victoria Island. Now, we've had two major bridges that lead to Victoria Island, Falomo and the Five Cowrie Bridge. Those have been there for before 20 years. Now, the question is, how did we prepare for the growth that we're having on that axis? It's time for you to have at least another bridge that is going to take. Because when you look at that bridge, today, since in the last 20 years, you've had a situation where you have 3 lanes coming from the new marina, you have 3 lanes coming from the old marina, you have 2 lanes coming from Muson end, you have 2 lanes coming from Oniko end, and they're all ending up in that two-lane bridge, five Cowrie.
Constructing another bridge appears like a very huge project, and I'm wondering how long that would take. But let me take this call very quickly. Okurafo, calling in from Abia. Thank you for holding on. Please go ahead with the contribution. Are you still there?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Jimmy Abate. Good morning, Mr. Anifemi.
Good morning, Mr. Okurafo.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to see Mr. Abate as a council candidate of Lagos State. So, my question is this, as of yesterday, I saw on the screen that recently Apapa has given the government 21 days ultimatum to clear Apapa Lagos gridlock. As you know, as you rightly said in your program, that property is in Lagos. I know very well that such a situation, what we are seeing down at Apapa, it ties down people's money, and people have to move forward in order to go to generate fund, and they are teachers. How can you solve such a situation? Presently, let's assume that by the grace of God, you are the governor here today. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day, and I wish you success and happy Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you
very much. Well, let's talk about Apapa. Yeah. For those who don't know, I stay in Apapa, so you should pity me. I know what I go through every day in Apapa. Again, it's about vision. It's about the future. You have a situation where I know that for the last 20 years, they've been talking about this trailer park. It was never completed. It was never. So in 20 years, there was supposed to be trailer parks to be where those trailers are supposed to park and be brought in only when necessary. That has never been done. I think it's only now that there's some fire brigade approach in trying to put the trailer parks in place. That's number one. Number two is that there's no way you have the kind of situation you have in Apapa that you not have a real system to move goods out of...
There's a Blue Line project in process. Do you intend to complete that, the fast rail
oh yes, that rail line has been on for 12 years.
So if you become...
That blue line has been on for 12 years.
Do you intend to complete it?
It must be completed, and I intend to complete it in 4 years.
There are other existing projects, the existing BRT bus terminals, the incumbent governor, for instance. All right, let's take this call very quickly. George is calling in from Ikeja. Good morning, George. George, are you there?
Hello.
Please go ahead, George, with your contribution.
Okay, sorry.
I just started hearing you. Good morning, Mr. Imo, and good morning to Mr. Baji.
Good morning, George.
Mr. Baji, you spoke about oligarchy in Lagos State, which sounds rather personal. I think you are referring to Tinubu as the political champion of the state. If somebody is doing well and what he's doing is not questionable, I expected you to question what he's doing, not he's just being in charge. Oligarchy, for example, exists in other countries, even in Britain that colonized us. It exists in the Netherlands, in many places where the oligarchy is in charge of the political system, directly or indirectly. What I expected you to address is what has been done wrongly. If Tinubu takes a contract, for example, and he executes the contract successfully, and people see what was done with it, is there anything wrong in that, just because he's a politician? Thank you.
Well, you talk about oligarchy. I hope you're not mixing it up with monarchy. Oligarchy is when you take the resources of the state, you control the resources of the state amongst yourselves. So we're looking at a situation where, if we look at Lagos, Lagos must be able to blossom for everybody, for all Lagosians, not just for a few people or for those who are assigned by a particular group of people. You mentioned BRT, for example. If you look at BRT today, it is not working as well as it was because of this situation of the oligarchs. Even where we're broadcasting from used to belong to the state.
We are beginning to make certain allegations that...
No, these are facts.
I'm afraid that you cannot prove
They're
on
facts.
this platform.
This
but I am concerned about
used
what
to belong
you will
to
do.
the state.
I am concerned about what you would do when you become governor.
Well,
and
fine.
I would really appreciate if we focus on those issues. I was about just asking you about some ongoing construction of 300 bus stops, laybys by the state governor in line with his goal of bequeathing world-class transportation system in this city. Under the initiative, 5,000 new buses are expected to be added to the public transport system. If you become governor, would you consider that a lofty idea enough to continue?
Yes, it is. But then again, we go back to it. We have you're talking BRT. Don't forget that the state government has had some 900 buses line fallow in the last 5 months. Now, because of the pressure, they have refused to let these buses out for the benefit of the public.
All right, let's take this call from the island. Super, good morning. Go ahead with your contribution, Super.
Hello.
I can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Yes, good morning, my dear governorship aspirant, and good morning in the studio.
Good morning, Super.
Good to have you on board to tell us what you're going to do. Number one, I have two questions for you. What are you going to do about the waterways? It looks like our waterways is just hanging in there. We've not been able to. I remember when I was a little boy, I used to take from Siemens to Apapa on ferry. My two.
It's all right. We don't have all the time, Super, so I think you made your point very clear. 60 seconds,
yes.
Waterways.
Again, waterways. Like I said, I'm an Apapa boy. We used to take ferry. Kathleen, we used to call it. Babake Kere, that's Jakonde. Put ferries on the road, on the waterways.
Mr. Bajo, what will you do about
No,
he's
asking
because of
me.
the time.
I'm saying that you've got to open up the waterways.
Okay.
You've got to open up the waterways. It's the only way you can move on. You go to Venice, they're on water, and they live a full life. So yes, that's the way to go.
All right, so I'm going to ask you this question again. Now, be careful the way you answer this time.
I know what you mean by be careful. If you ask me questions and I will give you facts, and so if you don't want me to give you facts, then don't ask.
In 2015, you were quoted to say that you won't run again. In case you lose this election, will you run again, Mr. Agbaje?
If I lose the elections in 2019, will
yes.
I run again? I hope I don't have to run again. I don't plan to run again.
All right, so if you would give us your word, we'd love to have more time with you to discuss these issues before the coming election.
Anytime.
Let me shake your hands.
Thank you very much.
You become governor.
Thank you.
Mr. Chibi Agbaje is the PDP candidate for the Guba polls in Lagos, and we really appreciate your time on the program. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow, God willing, with another exciting one. I am Nifemi Oguntoye, and God bless Nigeria.